So, my story starts on a sunny morning in Halifax, and I'm late for work, later than usual. And normally I would walk to work, but on this day I felt like I had to take my bike. And my bike at this time had no brakes. And Halifax is a pretty hilly city, if any of you have been there. So in retrospect, maybe this wasn't a great idea. So I took off, and I was being really careful. I was kind of stopping with my feet at all the intersections, and I was doing fine. And I got to kind of the main street where my work was, which happened to be on a hill. And I paused for a minute, but then I just went for it. And I started rolling, and to my surprise, I couldn't stop. And then I started to use my feet, and I lost my shoes. So then I was going down this hill shoeless. And I started shouting out to pedestrians to save me. I don't know what I was expecting them to do, but no one really reacted, and a lot of people have headphones. And I look in front of me, and there's an intersection, a downtown intersection, that I cannot stop myself from going through, and past the intersection is the ocean. And in front of the intersection is a garbage truck. So in a split decision, I go straight into the back of the garbage truck. And after a few minutes, I kind of get out of the garbage truck, and the garbage man takes my bike out and tells me to be more careful next time. But to my amazement, I'm fine. I have a big bruise on my thigh, but otherwise, I cheated fate. So naturally, I was having some celebratory drinks with some friends that night, and we were walking downtown, and I tripped on the sidewalk and twisted my ankle and broke my foot. So I was stuck for the summer, and this was my first summer in Halifax, and I was really looking forward to, getting outside, but it ended up being kind of a hard and a bit lonely summer. And so you'd think that I would learn from that maybe someone was trying to teach me a lesson, but I just felt more spiteful. So, in an act of defiance, I signed myself up for a 300-kilometer bike ride over mountainous terrain. And I convinced my innocent friend Jen to come with me. So we were going to bike the Cabot Trail. And we were going to bike it Labor Day weekend, which was 3 weeks after I got my cast off. So a few months passed, and the time has come, and we start at Union Station, so we have all our camping gear and all our bike gear, and we head on this train, and this is a 20-hour train ride. It's very exhausting. We finally arrive in Halifax. We have all of our gear that we have to schlep all the way to my apartment, and we finally arrive, and to find out that there's no heat and no internet and no hot water. So I think morale was low, and if Jen wasn't so polite, she probably would have shouted at me a bit more. But anyway, so the next morning after a sponge bath, we took off. We were on this shuttle, and we were headed up north to Cape Breton. And, the shuttle ride was fine. We talked to some people. They seemed, pretty nice, pretty down to earth. And we kind of arrived at this meet and greet of our group, and there were about 40 people, so we were kind of chatting to people. And it didn't take long for us to realize that the group was about 80% men, about 10% douchebags, and 100% spandex. So obviously the 10% came and talked to the only 2 women under the age of 50, and started mansplaining how intense this ride was going to be. And they also told us the story of the young girl who was mauled by coyotes. So we were feeling a bit nervous at this point. We had never done anything like this. So we went back to our bed and breakfast, and we had a pretty good night's sleep. And the next morning, we geared up in our spandex, and we took off. And we were actually doing it. There were fields of sunflowers and beautiful hills, and we made it. We biked 90 kilometers in one day, and we were feeling pretty good about ourselves, even though we were by far the last people. So we had a nice dinner, and then that night it started to pour. And this wasn't a drizzle, this was a downpour. And it was windy, and we just got an awful sleep. And the next morning, we had to put our wet tent away and put our wet clothes on and face the second day, which was supposed to be the most intense day. It was 130 kilometers and starting with 2 giant mountains. So we take off. We're about 2 kilometers in before we face the first mountain. And we start up this hill, and we're pushing and pushing, and everybody passes us. And we can't push anymore. So we start to walk our bikes up, and we're feeling pretty cold and pretty tired, and we're not having a great time anymore. So about an hour of climbing this mountain, we get to the top, and the top is kind of a plateau before a sharp descent. And the top of this plateau was all foggy. And so I started biking, and I kind of lost Jen in the haze. And it was just me all alone on this windy plateau. And all of a sudden I was kind of transported back to another time when I felt all alone, even though I was close to someone that I loved. And like this mountain, I felt like I was also trying to defy the odds with that in many ways, but each of my struggles was full of anger and frustration, and defiance always had a way of kicking me right in the ribs and leaving me breathless and full of shame. And so the fog kind of started to lift, and I looked down, and I found that I couldn't recognize myself as much. And I was kind of getting closer and closer to the edge of the plateau. And that's when I couldn't feel my hands anymore to press down on the brakes. And so that's when I decided that to kind of get control over me again, I would have to get off the bike and walk away.